we want to keep it real informal, and I think I was just supposed to introduce these guys, but on the,
I've got it down that you've got 15 minutes.
well, I'll have to
And
read
half
my
of my
script. I'll
15.
have to come up with a script here, but I did get on the internet night before last, Rod, and I got to thinking what this group might want to learn a little bit about, and I thought I'd get a few facts to give the group, and I might just ask, starting out, how many of you live on a farm? Well, there's a few, really, and maybe a bigger percentage, because really today there's less than 2% of the population that farm, and I'm not sure how many live on the farm, Rod, but it's probably not a whole lot more than that. But you know, and you go back to the 1900s, and most of our population lived on a farm. We were a very agrarian type society, and most people had a big garden, and they sharecropped, and they worked. They had a milk cow, and they had their own food supply. They made their own food, and I've got my slides up there, I guess. And there was my part, Rod. Well, we've already gone past it, but I was going to introduce Rod and and Darren, but the impact of agriculture has on this region, I guess, is our topic today. And yesterday's topic was the changes in agriculture. Is that right, Larry? And some of these slides are for both, really. And I guess what I'll do first is kind of go through these slides and maybe get you thinking a little bit about how things have changed in agriculture over the last 100 years. If you look, and you know, I feel like as a farmer, and I am a small farmer. I farm about 220 acres. And that's not very big anymore. That's very small. But I also run an agribusiness, Rice Agri Marketing, and I work with farmers on marketing their grain and then also selling them seed and genetics. But this is a slide about world hunger today, and it shows, and I don't have the color coordination, but the reds are very high, 35%. Of that population in those countries are hungry. You know, they have a lot of nutritional needs, and and as a farmer, I feel like my job is to help my fellow man and woman and the population that we help feed have food for their families. I mean, we're all here on earth to take care of each other, to help each other along, and whether it's teaching or if it's in factories, and you know, there's a lot of jobs, but all those jobs kind of help other people. And as a farmer, I feel like it's important. Everybody eats every day, and maybe it's on my first slide there. I might have had a saying in there, but a farmer touches every person's life every day, and I really take that to heart. I really think that's important to what we do, and we take it very seriously as a farmer. For one thing, we're growing food for our families, but we're also taking care of our neighbors and other people in the community as we work. And we are very blessed in the United States that we don't have many hunger issues. There are some, I know, but really very low if we look at the rest of the world. We're very blessed in how we are, but there's still a lot of need for more food production in the world, and I wanted to show that in this slide. And we'll go to the next slide. And this shows that Rod, I think agriculture in the last and this is just showing from 1990 to today, and then a projection for 15. Farmers are doing a very good job of feeding the population. In fact, hunger and the seriousness of undernutrition in the world has gone down dramatically in the last 25 or 30 years. And a lot of that has come through technology. And, you know, farmers have gotten bigger. They're using a lot of technology on the farm, a lot of advancements in genetics. Biotechnology is one of the words that people use. GMO is another a thing that's thrown out there, genetically mutated organisms, and those kind of advancements in technology that has come to agriculture has really improved our productivity and also our quality of our product that we're growing. And in that, we see that we're doing a pretty good job. We're bringing that nutritional need down in the world to lower levels. We're still not where we want to be. It's kind of like I serve on the hospital board, and we want every patient to be healed. We want 0 deaths. You know, your goal is always to have 0. You know, you want to do your very best, and we're not there yet, but we're trying. I think that's what this slide's doing, is we're really making some advancements, and a lot of that's through our technology that's come in the last few years. Next slide. And another thing I thought's interesting and you need to think about is how little we pay in the United States of our income goes to your food that you have. That, you know, every family's got a different budget, but if you really break it down to the food, a lot of times you go to a restaurant and you're paying for service and you're paying for other things besides the actual food. But in the United States, we've got one of the lowest percentages. We spend less than 7%, 6.6% of our income for food. And you go to other countries and you can see it's a big difference, you know, all the way up to half of their income that they make in a year. They probably make a lot less too, and that percentage goes up with that. But we're very blessed in this country that we have such a low cost of food and such a high quality of food that we have. And in that, I always say, you know, agriculture is an economic motivator for our other businesses, because think about it. If you had to spend 50% of your income to feed your family, how many iPhones, how many new colored TV sets, and how many vacations, just go down the list of the other things you spend in our society, how many of those dollars would be taken away from those other things we spend our money for, and the jobs that are related to those kind of things. I think that's important to think about. Agriculture, and we've always had, you know, our government, sometimes we're criticized for having a safety net for farmers, but a strong agricultural base that we have here in America gives us the opportunity to create a lot of jobs, and that's, I think that's seen in where we have such a low amount of our income spent on the food that we feed our families with. And that kind of just raises, these are just jobs that are actually related to agriculture. And I forget now, this is just something I got, I think maybe off the Soybean Association website. Darren's on that board. And over $100 billion in exports and over 24 million jobs right here in the United States are related to agriculture. And this is another thing, we're criticized sometimes about our advancements in pesticides. Everything a farmer uses on his crops has been thoroughly researched, it's been thoroughly examined by our government, and it has to pass certain labels and criteria, or it would never go to the market. And pesticides has been a big part of that technology, where we've increased our production and our efficiency and our quality also of our crops that we grow. And if we stopped using pesticides today, we'd lose almost 3 or 75%, 3 out of 4 bushels of corn, beans, all the food that we're producing here, we would lose 73% of that. And you think about what that would do to the cost of food that we would be buying, so. And in the last 30 years, corn farmers have done a very, sustainability is something that's used now, and farmers have been very innovative in bringing in advancements to take care of our water quality and our soils and our natural resources that we live on, and we steward also on that farm. And some of the statistics that are important, I think, to look at is we've cut in the last 30 years soil erosion by over 67%, and that's an important thing. That topsoil is very important to us in growing our crops. We've reduced irrigation by 53%. Advancements again in the type of irrigation that we do. Decreased land use per bushel by 30%. And some of that's through the technology that we talked about, the higher bushels. If we make more bushels on an acre of ground, then it's more productive, and it's we're doing a better job in that. Lowered the energy per bushel by 43%. Lessen greenhouse emissions by 36%. There's a lot of things on our tractors that are more environmental friendly than they used to be, and that's all come into play, and increased production 101% in the last 30 years, and I think that's pretty important too. But we're not done yet, and population is growing. And if you go back thousands of years ago, we've, the farmer, he's kept pace. We've done a pretty good job of that. You look at the world population, 2006, and what it's projected to be in the future. And I guess we've got our work cut out for us, Rod, there. Today we're at 7.2 billion, and we're going to have to keep producing more and keep getting better and better technology to come to be more productive, because they're not making any more land. My dad always said that, and he's right, Rod. If anything, they're putting more blacktop over top of some of this good land, and that always hurt me, and it always bothered me to see that happen. But we can go on to the next one there. And this was something I got off the internet too. This was Monsanto kind of gets a lot of negative press about their technology, and all companies have their good and bad about them, but their technology has really helped our production and and also our quality of products that we can grow. And they also have programs, and one of them is they've created a virus-free cassava for some of those red countries that we were showing there. Cassavas are grown in South America and Africa. It's a staple. It's like a potato it's like our potato, I guess, a very high starch product, and it's something that helps in malnutrition, and that's something biotechnology through Monsanto they've come up with that really helps in a lot of ways for a virus problem that they have. Drought-resistant corn, that's coming. Rice that prevents blindness, and still a lot of people don't think that Monsanto is a good company and doing some good technology or bringing good technology. They're following all regulated rules, very, very much regulated. All these agricultural companies are, and they've gone through all the processes to get their products labeled, and they've got good products, and they're proven to be safe, and You know, there's just a lot of things you can read on the internet that don't tell that whole story, though. And then I just had some pictures of some farmers. These are some McLean County farmers. There's Jerry O'Brien out there, and he's a big hog farmer in West Davis County. This is the Mercer family out Sutherland. That's the Fishers and the Murphys and the Winks, I think, up there in the shop one day. And then I think that's the Cecils. And I guess my last comment would be that, you know, our families are trying to help your families, and that's what our job is, to try to help you. And most farms, a lot of people say that it's all corporate farming. It's all family farming, is the way I see it. I mean, there's very few corporate farms, and I didn't look up the statistics, but I've seen them before. It's less than 2% are corporate farms. So anyway, I'll stop with that and let Rod go to talking here now. How about that?
How many of you've seen the Prius commercial where the parents are looking out the window and the little boy's sitting next to a Prius and he's going to wash it, but he's going to wait for it to rain? I like that commercial probably for a different reason than you might, though, because as I watch him looking up and waiting to do his job, waiting for that rain, it relates to me to agriculture. And how, Jeff, there are a lot of days that we look up and wait for that rain. We are the world's first environmentalists. We do things with what's provided to us through nature. And we use solar energy. All the crops you see out there are just capturing the sun and using that energy to create the products that we eat. We're very fortunate in this area. We've got a lot of good farmland. And I don't know how many of you study economics, but if you look at that and you look at this last recession that the country has gone through, and you look at the statistics for Owensboro and Davis County, you'll see that we didn't have the big decline, didn't have the big pullback that a lot of communities had and that our whole nation had. And a lot of that is the result of agriculture. Really the last 8 or 10 years until this year, agriculture didn't have a recession. We had good crops, we had good prices, had good production, and as a result we were able to parlay that money back into the community through places like Riverport, Owensboro Grain, and a lot of places that process agricultural products, providing jobs that Jeff indicated. But agriculture is different than any other business in a lot of ways, isn't it, Darren?
Yeah.
But one thing is that Darren is responsible for everything on his farm. If it happens because he gets it done, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen because he didn't get it done. And most businesses aren't that way. You know, you have the hierarchy, and I heard Larry talking about the administration, and when the administration gets heavy, there's not a lot of people down to do the grunt work. And if our farms get like that, then the hard tasks sometimes, like my crew out cutting tobacco right now while I'm sitting in this air conditioning talking to you, they probably are thinking that the administration's a little heavy today. But agriculture is a tremendous resource, and when you have good land that surrounds an urban area, you'll find a progressive community. And this is true almost anywhere you go. I've been real active in the tobacco production and in tobacco leadership, and about 7 or 8 or 10 years ago we had a tobacco buyout, and I was real concerned about that because the people in eastern Kentucky don't have a lot of the resources of fine land that we do. And they were able to raise 2 or 3 acres of tobacco and subsidize their family. They can't do that anymore because, for one thing, there's not a market there for them anymore. And the other thing is that it's not profitable, not near as profitable as it was before the buyout. So they haven't done that, and we're starting to hear a lot of emphasis. I heard on the news this morning from Western's public radio that they're gonna put a lot of emphasis on tourism for eastern Kentucky, because they're not blessed with the fine farmland that'll produce the agricultural products and produce wealth. And that's the next thing I want to talk to you about. There's a seed of corn. We take about 1/3 of a bushel when Jeff sells me the seed, and I go out and plant the seed on the farm. We take about 1/3 of a bushel to plant an acre. And that goes in the ground, and if we get adequate sunlight and a little rain like that fellow with Prius, then that little kernel grows into one of these. And there's about 700 kernels on this cob. That's 1 for 700. How would you like to invest in a return like that? It's not bad. There's a lot of other inputs that go into that, but what I'm telling you is the soil produces wealth. And I don't mean to say that because we're farmers, we're wealthy, but because we're farmers, we can help take those assets and produce things that just come from sun and rain, and we don't have to have a whole lot of natural resources. We are renewable energy. You can take this corn and you can do a lot of things with it, and Darren will probably tell you the same thing on the soybean, probably will. But you can have your cornflakes for breakfast. You can have your bacon that goes with your eggs, because the hogs eat this corn. You can have sweetener for your sodas and for a lot of your other foods go into that. And there's so many, so vast product. You can even take this and go through a distillation process, a fermenting process, and make fuel for your automobile. So all of that comes from the soil. All of that comes out of the ground. It's not taking one product and add a little something to it and selling it, or buying a shirt and retailing it to you at a little higher price and creating a couple of jobs. It's creating wealth, growing it out of the ground. And we are tremendously lucky in this area to have fine soils around our area. And because of that, we have fine farmers like Darren and Jeff and others that do a great job here. And we are proud that we can take that one kernel and come up with 700. And although we advance our technology all the time, Jeff, we're not responsible for much of that. You know, it comes from above. God blesses us with the rain. God blesses us with the sunlight, and we're able to do the in-between jobs and try to get it done. But it's a good life, and there's a lot of diversification in agriculture. Some farmers are specific about producing grain, or like Jerry O'Brien, the swine industry. A lot of us are still in many facets, and that would be for my operation. We have cattle. We have mama cows, and they have calves. We raise the calves up and feed them until they get to be about 800 pounds and ship them out to feedlots in Iowa. We have tobacco. We're raising tobacco this time, for the first time, for the e-cigarettes, for the nicotine, the liquid nicotine, and supposedly, I want to believe it, Darren, that it's a safe product. You know, the things that cause cancer are taken out, and so I'm very, very excited about that, to be on the politically correct side of tobacco for once. And we raise grain, we raise some vegetables, and we look all the time. We're looking for ways to improve, and it's a great life to be out there with your family, and those of you that are from the farm know that there's a lot of blessings in being out there, and even if you have to get up at 5:30 every morning and you work till dark every night, you come in and your family's surrounding you, you've worked together that day, and you talk about what you've accomplished. And one thing that's happened to me in the last few days is all our cows are calving right now. And I try to go down and check them enough so that if there's a problem, I can catch it. And the other day, we had a calf that was probably at least a month and a half premature. Didn't have any hair on the sides, had some on his head and his back. I just knew he was going to die. But I got 3 granddaughters that love animals, so I carried him home, and we started feeding him with a bottle. And yesterday he started sucking on his own. He weighs about 20 pounds, and he's about this tall. But I've invested a lot of time in him Not that I'll ever get that returned, but there's something about being involved in agriculture that's a special reward. And when I see those little girls holding that bottle for that calf and patting him and rubbing him and running him around the yard like a dog, well, it's pretty rewarding. And makes up for the sacrifices that we make sometimes in the hours that we put in or the difficulty of the work. It's a great life. And I would imagine that if you look back in your family, at least one, you may have to go 2 generations, you'll find somebody who's involved in agriculture. The thing about that is that technology keeps improving, Jeff, and there's less and less need for our numbers. Probably in 1950, 40% of the country was involved in agriculture in some way, and now it's less than 2%. Through innovation, through machinery, through all those improvements, and it'll continue to do that. If an acre of ground becomes available in Davis County now, there are 10 farmers trying to butt heads with each other to try to get it. It's very competitive because size is economy of scale, and size is more efficient. So that will continue to happen. There'll be less people involved in agriculture, and hopefully we can continue that trend of even more production, even with less people. Thank you.
I'm Darren Luttrell. I'm from Ohio County. Don't hold that against me. I'm a fourth generation. I've been very blessed in my farming life in that I was able to work with both of my grandfathers for a time. Still get to work with my father, and I've got 2 sons that farm with me, and I get to work with them every day. Not that they appreciate that a lot of times, but I still get to work with them. And I've got 2 grandsons that are just at least one of them is farm crazy right now. So I want to take a little different tact. How many of you, since this is part of this Common Read program, how many of you have got to see the author Joel Salatin the other day when he was here? A few of you did. I really, when I was asked to do this and told the book, I went ahead and purchased the book and got through most of it. And I was able to come over here and hear him speak the other day. And I want to throw a little bit of a rebuttal out there, just because I couldn't really sleep for a few days after that. Mr. Salatin, I appreciate the fact that he has been able to take a 450-acre farm in the Shenandoah Valley and make a living out of it. I think he runs a little loose with the facts occasionally. He is making a good living there. If you look on his website, he's also a speaker of that gets to travel around the country a lot, and he doesn't really tell you that he's getting $7,000 or $8,000 to come speak. So he's not just making his living off of selling rabbits, free-range chicken. So I want to throw that out. And the other thing too, and I had to really kind of keep myself in my seat that day when the insinuation was made that when you're farming as he does, that he is massaging the earth. If you were there, you know where I'm going with this. And the insinuation that folks like Rod and myself that are using GMOs or using the technology that's out there are more or less raping the earth. I took great offense to that. And I'm here to tell you, I mean, you could see off these slides a while ago that soil erosion is cut by 63%. If you're mistreating the soil, if you're mistreating and not doing your job, we're not going to save that much earth. So I had to get that off my chest. You just have to deal with it. But I'm very passionate about what I do. And when I got out of high school, the day that I graduated, I was on a tractor. I did not want to go to college, saw no need for it. That's another long story, but something I wished I had done. And a few years after that, I was lucky enough to go through an extension course with, it was a leadership course. And one of our speakers was Mr. Rod Kegel one day. And Rod, you will love the fact that the biggest thing that I remember from that, probably 20-some years ago, was the fact that Rod said, when you get up and talk to people that aren't farmers, or when you go to a function where there are not all farmers, you don't have to act like a farmer, you don't have to dress like a farmer, you don't have to sound like a farmer. This is the best I could do, okay? This is extremely important to me, though. I really appreciated the fact that I was able to get to come over here and also to be able to hear Mr. Southman speak the other day. This opportunity to be here because of the fact, I mean, I got off a combine to come over here. This is our payday right now, and so we all three of us got off a combine or got off something to come over here today. So they've said a lot, and I'm going to sit back and listen. I'm learning. I feel like I ought to be sitting out there with you guys. These guys are the smart guys in the bunch. But one of the quotes that I remember growing up, President John F. Kennedy said, "The farmer is the only person who buys retail and sells wholesale." Well, think about that. So, we're not told, for the most part, we're told what we're going to get for our product. The market dictates it, but we're not making a pair of shoes where Nike can come and say, okay, you're going to pay $120 for that. If you don't want it, don't buy it. We can't go to Owensboro Grain or Bunge or Purdue and say, we want $7 for our corn. We're going to get laughed out of the place. So that's something you need to remember. We sometimes as farmers throw out this, oh, woe is me, we're barely surviving, blah, blah. And it's tough years, there's great years. It comes and goes. Diversification, as Rod said, is always important. We grow corn, soybeans, we have cattle, we grow chickens for Purdue. We have 8 broiler houses that we grow for Purdue. We feed out about 1,000 head of calves a year that we buy and feed out. So diversification is always key in our business, and you can't get stuck in that one rut as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to throw it out for questions or anything, 'cause we're done.
We produced a group of cattle for Kroger's all the way to finish. Took them to Omaha and slaughtered them, brought them back under the Kentucky Proud banner, and they were hormone-free and antibiotic-free. And that doesn't mean that if a calf gets sick on your farm that you don't give him a shot of antibiotics, but you have to, if you do that, you certainly want to save the calf's life. You don't want to let him die because you're going to withhold antibiotics. But when you do that, you have to pull him from the group. He can't be included in that group. We were very successful with it. The meat went to 3 taste tests, 3 culinary institutes, and did well in all the competitions. But when Kroger decided that they were going to try to feature that in their store, it cost about an extra $120 per cow to go through that program. You say, well, why is that? Well, the steroids that are put in most of the animals that FDA says are safe cause the animal to use feed more efficiently. And where it may take 6 pounds of feed to produce a pound of meat, without the hormones, it may take 8 pounds of feed to produce a pound of meat. So you have added costs to that. We're willing to do whatever the consumer wants. If the consumer wants hormone-free, antibiotic-free beef or chicken or pork or anything else, we could produce that. But it costs us more to produce that. And we don't have a Whole Foods store, Whole Goods, what's the name of it?
Whole Foods.
Whole Foods
Yeah.
store around here. But I've been in 2 or 3 of them, and they feature a lot of that stuff. But when you walk in, you better get ready to pay about 40% more than you would if you check out of a Kroger store or something else. Right now, our consumers aren't telling us that they're willing to do that. Can we produce hormone-free beef or chicken or any of the others? Yes, we can. Are there costs associated with that? Yes, there are. Are we willing to saddle those additional costs if the consumer tells us that's what he wants? We are if the consumer is willing to pay those costs. So All of those things are available. And, you know, we had some kids out from Czechoslovakia about 2 years ago out on the farm. It's about this time of the year. Jeff and we were threshing soybeans, and they came out into the field and never seen equipment like that and all those things. But as we were sitting there, a lot of times a farmer will pop a hull of soybeans open and chew them up, and probably it's like coffee. The first time you ever do that, you don't think you'll ever chew another one.
Yeah.
You get used to it, and you do it a lot. And some of the kids saw me do that, and they said, "Are these GMO beans?" And I said, "Just about all the beans we produce are GMO." And they said, "You're eating them." And I said, "Yeah." He said, it's against the law in the EU to eat those because they're not good for you." And the EU has formulated a propaganda campaign. Propaganda is good, propaganda is bad. You can take that how you want to, but to protect their products and to keep their prices high, they've convinced the consumer that they don't want to buy GMO, and in fact, you can't even ship GMO products to the EU. So the consumer controls the market. You tell us what you want, and we'll produce it, but you got to pay for what you want. It doesn't come without costs.
I think really you're looking at, you know, I know from the chicken industry side, whenever Purdue first started, we've been 16 years, I think, growing chickens for them. And their chickens were given antibiotics whether they needed it or not. It was in the feed, basically. And now they're at the point, probably 5 years ago, that they said it's no hormone, no antibiotics, unless there's a need. You know, if there's a sickness starts through a flock of birds, you've got 100,000 birds in one building. You don't want to lose them all just because you don't want, you know, and they package them different. We're in the process, I guess started last summer, that Purdue is actually moving more towards an organic. We don't use, we don't use Roundup on anywhere around where the chickens are grown. It's just one of the agreements we have with them, and it's going to take like a 5-year process to get through the organic labeling. But you know, we don't use Roundup for weeds, and that's just the first step on our end. Their step is going to be when are they going to find organic corn, organic soybeans? How are they going to do all that? And they're way smarter than I am, so I think they've got a line on that. So.
There, any animal, including human, that has ever had antibiotics, there are traces of antibiotics in your body from then on. So if I give a calf a shot for pneumonia, as I did last night, I had a calf that was sick, he would have been dead this morning had I not given him a shot. That shot, if that's the only one he gets in his whole life, when he goes to the killers, there will be traces of antibiotics. The FDA says that what we have to do is we have to have a 30-day withholding period. If we give a calf a shot, he can't go to market for 30 days because if it's before 30 days, there's too much antibiotic and it's not safe. I guess it's just a question of how much do you trust the FDA. There's a lot of people that want organic. You know, I say a lot, there's a few that want organic. My sister drives to Newburgh, Indiana to buy chickens to cook in her oven because they're organic. And she was raised on the farm, she thinks there's a big difference. And that's a great thing about our country. You know, you have that option. We follow the FDA requirements. Our calves, almost all of our calves, except for the females that we hold back for breeding, for replacement cattle, have steroids at some time or another. The FDA says that you got a 90-day withdrawal period, that you can't sell an animal for 90 days since he's had steroids. So all of that's been worked out. There's people smarter than I am deciding what's safe for you. You can believe them or not. Some do, some don't. Most of us don't pay attention to it. Most of us go to the grocery store, and if chicken breasts are 89 cents a pound and organic's $2.50 a pound, we don't believe it. We buy 89 cents a pound. It's price driven for most aspects.
I don't think it ever will be, just because, just say we'll go back to the chicken because that's kind of what I know, but, from the day it's born, almost right a book, 7 weeks later, it's in the store. 24 hours after it's picked up from my farm, it's in a store somewhere. So,
Did you say 7 weeks? I'm sorry.
yes, approximately 7 weeks. It varies from flock to flock, but it'll basically be that kind of time frame. And, an organic or free range may be 9 weeks. So just the time frame of feeding, just a little bit longer. Now, the organic, and, to be honest, I really feel like that when somebody puts an organic label on something, that's just their way of saying, I'm gonna charge you more because it's got organic written on it.
There's no rules about it? I mean,
Yeah, I guess there probably is.
they have to go.
Yeah,
through the program.
Yeah.
For an animal to be organic, my cattle were sold as all natural, no hormones, no antibiotics. They weren't organic.
So all natural is one term.
Right.
Yes.
Organic's another term.
Right.
Organic, they would have to be
Very
fed organic-free feed.
Food too.
Yes.
The price of organic will never be as low as production agriculture. Because if this was an organic ear of corn, it would be about half that long and about half the kernels on it. Because you can't use commercial fertilizer. You can't even produce on ground that's had commercial fertilizer on it in the last 3 years. Isn't that the number? And you can't use pesticides. I can't spray the grass or the weeds in here. I have to plow the corn, which sometimes will adequately get it, according to what the crop history of your field is. But many times the weeds are going to compete very successfully with the corn or soybeans, and
Farming back in the 40s, 50s was probably as close to organic as what we will ever see on a large scale. And I can tell you from what my grandparents told me, the good old days weren't always all that great.
What year did we start commercial fertilized, Jeff? Was in the 40s?
Right after World War II.
Yeah, World War II's.
Almost the 50s.
Yeah. That's when
So, up until then, when you didn't have the commercial fertilizer, now you have a lot of chemicals in the fertilizer. A lot of those chemicals are found to be favorable to the crop, some are not. A lot of debate over that, but to be organic, you can't use anything but natural fertilizer. And the people in Africa raise organic tobacco. They have a jar they keep in their house, and that becomes their fertilizer. They take it out to the tobacco patch, and that becomes their fertilizer. Not many of us in production agriculture want to go back to that. But you dictate the market. You dictate the market. And if the price is there, we'll change the practice.
There was a reason why almost every tractor sold back in the 40s and early 50s was sold with a manure loader on it. Every small farm had a manure loader on it. And there's a reason for that.
Well, where's all the manure going now? Like, I'm just asking, because I know in Indiana, they were talking the other day about these huge manure, they're called holding places.
Mhm.
And people are arguing and saying, we don't want that next to our house, we don't want that next to our house. So where is all the manure going off of farms, off of people's farms now?
We spread all of ours on our own ground.
You're using it
Yes.
again. So you are using that kind of fertilizer.
Oh, yes,
some
yes,
places too, so-
absolutely.
And your soil conservation plans now examine the number of animals you have on your farm and the acres in your farm. And if you exceed the animals to acre ratio, you can't have any more animals.
Because you're gonna have too much. of
Too
a-
much manure.
Well,
And-
I think they were talking about, and I just want to ask real quick, why'd you have to take the cows all the way to Omaha to slaughter? There's no place close?
Well, there's Yoder's, and there's another place being
Yoder's is
built in
pretty
McLean
small,
County.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but
Truckloads.
when I
Yeah.
was in Omaha, the plant where my cattle were taken killed 5,000 head per day. kill 5,000 head of cattle per day. And they have the workforce to do that. They have the technology to box it, and to ship it, and they have the markets created. And for a small, kill floor, which would have to be small in Kentucky, to come in and compete against that, it's almost impossible. Now, they're very small, yes, there are some. I don't know if you saw in the paper, I think it was Sunday, they announced that they're gonna build another small kill floor in McLean County. And, I think he can be successful because, people like to source their food now, and that's another big issue. Suzanne Cecil's really, trying to capture that in sourcing your food, having it produced locally, knowing who produced it, going out and seeing the farm or the facilities where your food is produced. Jimmy Gillis on the west side of town, and some other people too, Tim Taylor and Larry Sampson, some other people are sourcing cattle. You can buy a quarter of a cow, or you can buy whole beef, and you know where it's produced, and you're looking at the guy that raised it in the eye, and if you want no hormones, he's gonna give you one with no hormones. So a lot of that's taking place, and people are becoming very successful with it.
I feel like, Mr. Southton, he has really good ideas. I question whether, I question whether on a large scale. One of his comments that day was, well, if every apartment house or every building that people lived in Owensboro had a room off the side with a garden in it and a cistern on top, yeah, I just question whether he's living in reality or not.
There's no doubt about it, but I
And
live on enough room, I could have a blooming chicken, and I don't have one.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? I couldn't even manage to put a chicken in the yard with a dog. So, I think there's a difference between having a chicken in an aquarium in your house.
Yes.
And, we all live in areas that have the possibility to throw our scraps out to our chicken.
Oh, yes,
instead,
yes.
I'm putting them down the garbage disposal and feeding nothing, and.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying local. I mean, I love it. Every chance I get, I go to the farmer's market in Beaver Dam. I love it. I think it's great. I don't like people saying that because it's grown local, it's safer than what you can buy at Kroger's, because it's not necessarily so. Even though I can look at Rod in the eye and know that I'm buying that calf from him, I'm going by his word on on what he did and what he didn't do. So,
And I think that's what the fragmentation of agriculture is different now, because, in 50 years ago, it would have been more looking in somebody's eye.
yes.
And it's, and the consumers get afraid. You find out your spinach has E. coli on it because it's been shipped in from so far away. We're spending a lot of money shipping things all over, but I don't want to give up my avocados, and I don't want to give them up.
Yeah.
So,
And he brought up the comment about supermarkets were really first started in the 40s. Maybe the building concept for a supermarket was started in the 40s, but any history book you ever read is going to talk about the marketplace within any town,
right.
where farmers would bring their produce into town to sell. It was that was their version of a supermarket.
Food chain.
I think that you'll find that a plant will take up nutrients, and I don't think that plant will find that if there's some trace of an antibiotic left in that manure, that antibiotic will be something that plant wants in it, for it to grow. I don't see, you'd have to talk to a chemist or a botanist or somebody to really get a firm answer on that, but as far as seeing it, this ground had cow manure spread on it before we planted the corn. Do I think there's any antibiotics in this corn from that cow manure? I think there's very little in the cow manure. Probably the process that the cow manure goes through in decomposition would eliminate the antibiotics in it, but it sure makes a lot better corn. I guess you'd ask, does the taste carry forward? Does the taste of the manure carry forward?
It's a little different. So,
Yeah, I think so. I think that what we're, personal opinion only, no scientific basis at all to back this up, probably what we're seeing a lot of is, obviously some of it's overuse, but I don't know how far back that we would have to trace that. 30 years ago, we were putting chemicals on that would call for so many pounds per acre, so many gallons per acre. And now we are at the ounces per acre. I can take a little bag of chemical and the bag will dissolve in the water. We don't ever even touch it. Put it in an 800-gallon spray tank and, cover 80 acres. So the particles that are used, the amounts used are so much less. It may have taken 50 years for the problem to work its way down the Mississippi to the Gulf where where there's problems. Is there overuse? I think Chesapeake Bay, I think it's more of a, gosh, I don't know, 2/3 of the chickens grown in the United States are grown in the Delmarva Peninsula. They've just chicken pooped their way into trouble. I mean, there's just not enough. That's one reason why you see Tyson here, you see Purdue here, you see, a lot of these bigger companies coming to Kentucky is because we've got an abundance of grain. They're 24 hours from here. They can be at any point within the continental United States, and that's what they want. That's why they situated at Cromwell. They can hit the Natural Parkway or the Western Kentucky Parkway in 24 hours. They can be at any point in the continental United States. So, and they've got plenty of ground to spread chicken litter on. I mean, that's just, it makes a lot. Every chicken house you see out there makes 180 to 200 tons of chicken litter. So.
If I can add just a little bit to that, we're using less and there's a cost, and so a farmer wants to use less, but I think we've also learned through a lot of research. The university and private industry has done a lot of research on how to efficiently and grow and do the best use of those nutrients. And a lot of farmers today, they'll have filter strips and waterways and wash cobs. I
Yep.
forget now what
what-
that stands for, but
Yep.
anyway, there's a lot of conservation practices, and it's come through research and a lot of it farmer driven. Rod said it, we were the first environmentalist. I really feel like the farmers are out there, we're raising our families and we're wanting to take care of that farm and be good stewards, but also leave it in a better way for our next generation. And I see that. I know Darren serves on a conservation board in Ohio County. Each county in Kentucky has a conservation board, and we talk about those things. We have programs that help farmers in education on that, and it's a serious thing, and water quality is important. We get blamed for a lot of it, agriculture does, because, when they look at contamination in the rivers and down in the Gulf of Mexico, they come back and they say, well, this factory is just on 10 acres, but this farmer, he's farming 100,000, each county has maybe 100,000 acres in it, so, the majority of the land and the water comes through what we're stewards of. But when it comes right back down to it, most of it shows that, a farmer's doing a good job, but, maybe there's septic systems and maybe there's wildlife. I mean, our population of deer and all the animals, not only do they eat our crops, Darren, but they're in those creeks, and they're not fenced out like Rod's cattle out of the creek. They're out there, and that's where you see the E. coli, or you might see other contaminants, but the farmer gets the rap a lot of times. So.
And that's not to say we don't deserve some of it. I mean, seriously, you got to be real about it. We have to take our share. We just don't need to take 100% of it. Yeah. We can all do a better job. I mean, we're always looking for the way to do a better job. Just like you said, the filter strips around, almost all of our, even just the little ditches will have a 20 to 30, 40 foot buffer around it. We farm a lot around Rough River, and every one we've got's got 60 foot around it. You know, it doesn't cost you anything, and it serves its purpose, so.
I was wondering, like, what kind of technologies you guys might be looking forward to, like maybe what the next thing to drive for productivity, like anything in the future that you might be excited about.
A tractor that drives itself. And it's here, it's here. You can actually, I think John Deere has it now, if you want to pay the money, the combine, yeah, free. Yeah, you can be in the combine driving it and control the tractor that's running the auger wagon beside it. You control it. You can take 2 tractors in the same field and control one of them remotely. Nobody in it. That's already here.
Does anybody around here have that yet?
I don't know, I don't think so.
No, but what they do have, and I'm sure Darren has it, a lot of farmers do, is the steering system that drives from GPS. And I was amazed, I was in a friend's tractor not long ago, and long field and perfectly straight row. It goes by GPS and guides the tractor. And the only thing it doesn't do is turn when you get to the end. But when you make the turn, it finds and puts the rows exactly right, and you come right back, and you don't touch the steering wheel. And we got to the end the second time, and all of a sudden, beep. And I said, "What's wrong? Something wrong?" He said, "No, just in case you're asleep, it wakes you up so you can turn."
Yeah. We've got one field at around close to Dundee that it's almost a mile long, and I literally will sit up in the tractor when I'm planting. I will sit up in the tractor once I get going, hit the button, pull my iPad up, and read a book until I get to the other end, and then set it down, turn, set the planter back down, read a book. Now that sounds great, and it is most of the time, but you know, because I know you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, this doesn't sound like that hard of a job. I know that's what you're thinking. So just picture yourself getting in your car tomorrow, driving to Orlando, Florida, and then spending the night, and then getting back in the car and driving back home. And then the next day, getting in the car, driving back to Orlando, Florida, and the next day, driving back home. You get 14 hours every day in the car with very few breaks, and do that for the next 2 months. And we started shelling corn 3 days ago, and it will be, hopefully sometime in late November, we'll be done. So the next 2 to 3 months, 8 days a week, we're gonna be, you know, when we were planting this year, there were 2 guys on our crew that worked, and my oldest is one of them, that in a 1 week period, they had, he had a little over 120 hours in 1 week, 7 days. So it's, you know, there is a lot of break time, but when it's time to go, it's time to go. So.
There's a few other things too that I'm looking forward to on the genetic side that, you know, the drought resistant corn and soybeans, those are coming out, and there's a few more, we've got weed resistance that's come about, and we've got some new products that are coming out that'll help us on that, might help us on our weed control. But, you know, I look at the KBP plant here, Rod, and what they're doing, I mean, they're producing the vaccine for this Ebola right here in plants, and we're just on the infancy of that technology and what that can do for our community and for our well-being. You know, if you think about it, if you could take your antibiotics in your cornflakes, or you could take your vitamins every morning with your oatmeal.
Cinnamon roll.
Cinnamon roll, there you go, I like that, with some sugar on top.
There you go.
Yeah, but, I mean, those kind of things are being dreamed and being worked out right now. And, you know, it's exciting to be a part of that.